Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Camera Work Podcast number 36. I am John Ricard, and I'm joined by a friend of mine named Stephen Gomez. What's up, Stephen?
Good. How are you?
Good. So you are actually, what is your position? You're a buyer at K&M Camera, is that correct?
Yeah. Currently, I am one of the buyers at K&M Camera, local photo store here in New York City.
Right. And you've been on a podcast before, and I was trying to remember on the way here if you've been on this podcast twice or once. But you've definitely been on. Is it twice or once?
I believe it's twice.
Right.
Yeah, twice.
Okay, so it's a third time.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so that's good. So usually Ray will be back hopefully next week. It's sometimes just hard to match our schedules, and I figure I'd rather get the podcast done than not do it if the schedules don't match. All right, so shout out to Ray. Hopefully we'll see him next week. Now, we usually start off with what you've shot in the last, whatever, week or two or recently. So is there anything you've been working on photographically?
In terms of photography, I've just been working on a lot of basics. The last shoot I did was for a buddy of mine, John Smalls, who's an artist here based out of New York City. And he wanted to do a portrait shoot for his business and for his website and all of that. So I went ahead and did that, and it came out really well. I was really happy with how all the images came out. It was a great experience. I was really happy with the shoot.
Right. And I just realized that I actually know him. I didn't realize that
Yeah.
the whole time that you were posting the stuff on Facebook. Yeah, I actually know him.
Yeah, he goes to the gym. He's been around for a while.
Right. Cool guy. Now, the last thing I shot was not something that I actually wanted to be shooting or was supposed to be shooting, but I attended my sister's wedding. And she had never said to me if she hired a photographer or not. So I didn't know, like, if I get there, they're going to be expecting me to shoot, like, a little bit? Are they going to expect me to shoot the whole wedding? And I didn't know. And
Yeah.
For me, ideally, she would have hired a photographer, and then I can just do a little bit here and there, in which case I'd bring my Leica. If I find something interesting, I would shoot it. But if I think there's a chance that I actually have to shoot the entire wedding, then I bring the Nikon, because I'm working, and it's so much faster and easier. But turned out she did have a photographer there. So I'm saying to myself, well, this is good. I don't have to worry about shooting the wedding. I can just sit back and, like, enjoy the wedding. But as I'm sitting there, I'm watching, and like she's doing a thing where they, like, guess they're saying their vows or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, because you always think of how you would shoot whatever it is that you're attending, correct? Yeah. You do this as well?
For sure.
Right. And to me, the photographer's not catching my sister's face as she's looking at the groom. She's not catching, like, the crying, the laughing, the emotion. And I'm sitting there going to myself, like, okay, I'm not going to shoot it. There is a photographer here. I don't have to shoot it. I've got the Nikon, but I don't have to shoot it. And like minute after minute is passing, and second after second.
And it's killing you.
It's killing me. And I'm looking at all of these moments that I'm thinking are supposed to be caught, that I feel like maybe they're not being caught. Now, I don't know if she caught them. I'm just saying when I looked, I didn't see those moments being caught. And I felt like, I don't know if you ever read Batman, The Dark Knight Returns.
Of course.
Right. So in chapter 1, it's 10 years in the future, and he's retired. He's like, I'm not going to be Batman. And he's watching TV, and he goes to one channel, and it's like, the mutant gang has just killed like 10 more people, and changes the channel, and it's like the news report. The mutant gang has just, kidnapped the commissioner, changes the channel. The mutant gang has, killed a nun, whatever. And then it just keeps building, and then before you know it, he's Batman. He's not even in control of it, if you remember. He just, all of a sudden, he's Batman, not even like by choice, but that's what I felt like. So before you know it, I'm sitting in the front row
with the Nikon,
and I'm shooting that reversed shot of my sister's face reactions and the rear of the groom's hands. They're kind of behind his back, looking very nervous. Mm-hmm. And I was able to get like his hands with her face in the same frame, and a shot that I think should be captured. So maybe she got it. I don't know, but I didn't want to shoot it, but I felt like Batman, like I had to like jump in there and do it. I had no choice.
Did you feel like you were stepping on the other photographer's toes?
No, because I was sitting in the front row and I wasn't like in the aisle. I wasn't that guy that's running around. And then after that, I really didn't shoot much. I mean, it was like my brother was there, and he just bought a Sony A7. I think he has the newest, the A7R2. I think that's the one he has. So he shot a decent amount, and then one of our cousins was there, and he had the D800 or one of the 800 variations, and he shot a little bit. So I really didn't want to shoot it. I was fine not shooting it. I didn't have this burning desire to shoot it, so I was fine. But I had a couple of like observations though, like as I was watching the whole process of the wedding, because like I said, I go and I end up spending half the time watching a photographer. But this is one of the things I thought was really weird. So, okay, so she's shooting the wedding.
Yeah.
And then we get upstairs into, what is it, the reception, I guess? The reception.
The party.
The party part, right. And there's a TV playing with pictures showing. So I'm like, oh, okay, wow, this is cool. Like, she got the shots up immediately, and you can view the pictures, but they're not watermarked. So I thought that was kind of weird that you're not, like, promoting yourself with the watermark, and your work is there, and I didn't know how she got them up that quick. But as I'm watching, she's in a couple of the pictures.
Oh,
so,
okay. She's using other people's pictures.
Not her. Not her. The DJ has a guy who works, because remember, the pictures are shown by the DJ booth. The guy's playing music, and there's 2 monitors there, and the pictures being shown on the screen are from the person who works with the DJ.
So they're not even photographer's photos. They're some assistant's photos.
Right.
The DJ's
DJ's assistant's photos.
That's a new one.
That's what I don't go to a lot of weddings, but it blew my mind because I kept thinking of all these things. Like, on the one hand, like, if I'm the wedding photographer now, do I have to say to the client, hey, wait a minute, you can't show pictures that aren't mine? Because this is going to sound arrogant, but I'm going to think the pictures suck if I didn't take them, because if I thought those were good shots, I would have shot those. I shot my shots because I know my shots are better. That's got to be your attitude going into the wedding at least.
That's why they hired you.
Right, that's why they hired me, and they didn't hire the assistant to the DJ or whoever this was affiliated with the DJ. And again, I'm not trying to say the picture sucked or whatever. I'm just trying to say my mind state would be, I don't want anybody else's pictures flashing on that screen that people are going to think are my pictures.
Yeah.
But would you object to that if you were shooting?
I mean, everybody clearly knows that you're the photographer at the wedding, right? If you're the hired photographer, you usually have the fancy camera and whatever. And they assume when they go to the reception and they see all these photos of the ceremony being shown, they're going to assume that you were the one who took them. And if they're bad shots, that's going to reflect poorly on you.
Right.
And if they're good shots, that still might reflect poorly on you. Because if they're better than your shots, you're going to be like, well.
Yeah. They're going to be, where's that shot we saw in the reception where the couple was jumping the broom or whatever?
That just seems like a trap almost.
Yeah. Isn't that strange?
Yeah, and they should have given you at least the photographer a heads up, I would imagine. Because that's kind of weird. I've never seen that. I've been to I go to a pretty decent amount of weddings, and I've never seen that.
Yeah, it seems weird to me. Like, and I think that's something that, again, if you were a wedding photographer, you'd actually have to consider talking about that ahead of time in your contract, saying you cannot show another photographer's work. Because as you said, if the pictures suck, it looks bad on me. If the pictures are great, it looks bad on me, because now you're looking at me going, why didn't you get the picture of us kissing with the sunset?
Exactly.
And I'm like, well, I was shooting a grandmother at that point or something. So it's a lose-lose situation for me. But it was interesting, though, that, like, the technology is such that a person who is not the hired photographer can still run around, capture a whole bunch of shots, throw up a slideshow instantly, and entertain people.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that's what modern technology has done. I mean, it's pretty impressive for professionals as it is with the workflow you can have, how quick of a workflow you can have. But even with something like a smartphone or just a really like a small DSLR, you can put it onto a computer, run it through something like VSCO, and hit it with some kind of filter to make it look somewhat good, and then just put it on the projection screen.
On the screen, right. And I guess this guy wasn't processing. Like, I don't think he was processing. I think he just took him right out of the camera, threw him up, and he did it all through the wedding. You know, so
impressive.
And it was funny. And then here's the other thing that I thought
this
was
DJ
funny.
sounds like he's working harder than the photographer. To be honest with you, it sounds like he's there. He's putting the legwork.
Right. It's like one-stop shopping. You hire the DJ, and you've got your photography taken care of. But the other thing that I thought was funny was, so the photographer left after a while. Okay, again, and I asked my sister about it later, and she said it was like 4 hours of coverage that she had paid for with the photographer. But the thing is, so my sister, her husband, I guess would be the word, right? Her husband, his cousin is DJ Enough, who DJs for Hot 97 sometimes. And he DJ'd for like an hour at the wedding. Okay. But that came after the part that the photographer left. And the part where a lot of family people were dancing also came during that time. And the cutting of the cake came after the DJ was gone. And the photographer who was hired didn't end up getting any of it. And it got me to thinking that, and again, I'm not in wedding photography, so this is just kind of like an outside opinion in a way, but it almost seems to me that there shouldn't even be an option for less than complete coverage.
I agree.
Because of course they're going to, like my sister and her husband are going to remember DJ Enough was there. They're going to remember, you know, my brother dancing, my mother dancing, whatever. And they don't have any pictures like that. It almost seems like a disservice to say to the couple, hey, if you want, I'll cover half the wedding.
Yeah, that's weird. I mean, I'm not very well versed in wedding photography and how you approach it from the sense of being the photographer. But from the weddings I have attended, usually the photographer's there all day in the beginning with the client, and they do all those pre-wedding photos, and then they usually stay throughout the entire ceremony so that they catch those pivotal moments like the first dance and the cake cutting and
but I have seen
family things. It's
but
weird
I've definitely seen wedding photographers who say 8 hours of coverage is X amount of dollars, and I guess that means if such and such thing happens, you're screwed. You don't get it. And again, I understand this is the norm for the wedding industry, but again, it almost seems like it's almost like you going to a restaurant and you're like, well, give me some wine and like a paper cup. Like the restaurant would go like, no, we can't do that. It has to be in a glass or you get what I'm saying.
You have to do it right. If you're going to do it, you got to do it right.
Right. We're not going to let you just come in and say how you want to do it. We've got to do it right.
Yeah.
And it just seems so weird that now, again, we're in a time where it almost doesn't matter because there's 19 people taking pictures of DJ Enough. And I guess she does have those pictures. She's been throwing them up all over Facebook. But the thing again, now you get to the wedding album. If I shoot your wedding, I don't want your cousin's pictures in my wedding album. That I can't do that. It's the same as that screen. So she might end up with a wedding album that doesn't have those pictures in it, even though those pictures were captured. So I don't know. The whole thing just seemed really like strange to me.
Well, it's
whole thing.
It's weird. I mean, that's what smartphones have done, really, for professional photography. You've always had a traditional photographer who's been there to capture the moments in the wedding, but now you have a lot of people who have like a hashtag for their wedding, right? So on Instagram, people will put up pictures of the wedding with this hashtag, and you'll have all these photos from the not hired photographer. And it's cool to like be able to look at those during the wedding, after the wedding. But I don't think there should be a commingling of those photos with the wedding photographer's photos.
Unless you had a DJ that you really cared about and your photographer was gone, and now you're going, I'd rather have a bad iPhone picture of the guy in the book than no picture. So I could see both sides of it because, again, if I were the photographer, no, I don't want anyone else's pictures in my book, period. Conversation over. If this were my wedding and someone caught a good picture on a phone, then I would want that picture in my wedding book. And I have this kind of theory of life. I think I came up with this. I don't have a name for it, but I've never heard anyone else say this, and it's nothing profound, but I came up with this. It's this idea that two people can have completely opposite opinions, and they both can be right.
Yep.
Not one is wrong. They're both right. And an example I think of with it that's easy to understand, I think, is like you picture a 17-year-old girl. She wants to get a tattoo of her boyfriend's name across her arm or on her boobs or whatever. Okay, what does mom say? Mom says, no, don't get the tattoo. You're going to regret it.
Yeah.
Mom is right.
Hopefully mom says that.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, not let's go, right? I'll pay for it.
Hopefully mom says no.
But mom is right and says don't get the tattoo because the girl is going to regret it. And it is a stupid thing. But let's look at the other side. The 17-year-old girl is right also because that's what you're supposed to do at 17 is get a really bad tattoo that you're going to regret, that you learn from and you don't do again.
Yeah.
That's what you're supposed to do. So the 17-year-old girl is right. She should not be looking at things like a 35-year-old mother. She should be looking at the world like a 17-year-old, and she should go to Europe for the summer, and she should spend all her money to get a ticket for the Foo Fighters or whatever. Yeah. So they're both have different opinions, but they're both right. And that's how I look at something like that wedding album. If I'm the photographer, I've got a certain stance, and I'm right. But if it's my wedding, I've got a completely different stance, and I am right also. We're both right, even though we're crashing. So interesting way to look at it.
I think like all those things need to be worked out though, because for something like a wedding that's expensive as it is, and you're paying, hopefully for a quality photographer to do the work. I mean, if you're gonna have somebody like DJ Enough show up at your wedding and spin for your wedding even for an hour, you want to be able to have them both be there at the same time, so the photographer can capture the moment. Because, I mean, not everybody gets a high-profile DJ to show up at their wedding.
Absolutely. That without question, is something that should have been worked out by my sister ahead of time to say, hey, we need to make sure that these particular events are covered no matter what it's going to cost us. Yeah.
Yes. If it's an extra couple $100, it's probably worth it because that's something that you really only get once in your life.
Right. And you're going to want to show people that without question. Yeah. So I had another observation as I'm watching this wedding.
Yeah.
So they've got the booth going on. The thing like you go and you push the button, or they push the button, I guess, and you take a picture in a booth.
Oh, like a photo booth?
Correct. It's like a photo booth, and they print the pictures right away. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, wow. So the guy who's running the booth, like he's probably looking at the real photographer going like like, sucker, I got the better gig because you're running around getting all of these different pictures and putting people together, and, you know, you're kneeling down and long lens and 2 cameras. And this dude can just sit there with this booth and just go like, hey, jump in here. And he pushes a button and click, click, click. There's your 3 pictures. You have the print. Everybody's smiling. They walk away happy. So he's probably thinking he's got a good gig. And I'm thinking to myself, well, wait a minute. His job is so simple. How long is it until the hall just buys that machine and gets a guy at minimum wage to run that machine? Because anybody can run the machine.
Just gotta press a button.
Yeah, you just push the button.
Yeah.
So he's probably looking like, hey, I'm smarter than you. But I'm looking at it like, I don't know, man. You might be on shaky ground with that booth, because, again, if the reception hall buys that booth, anybody can run it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's a super hard thing to do. You can just buy this stuff off Amazon probably and just put it together, and somebody presses this button. If this happens, just change the batteries. Yeah,
I've been to like wedding, like the WPPI. I went to that one year, and then there's a whole lot of people. Yeah, it's like a wedding convention. You have all the different vendors are there, and you'll see guys who rent out those booths and guys who sell the booths, and there's all different versions of it, different configurations of them and things like that.
Yeah, it's a big business.
Yeah, but anybody can buy it, and like I said, once the hall has it, you're done.
Yeah.
That's just part of the hall.
I think a lot of those halls have like setups and agreements with photographers, and I'm pretty sure a lot of these bigger halls have like lists of photographers they work with, and that's probably worked out.
But even still, that's still under the control of the hall and not under the control of the photographer. They're the ones saying, let's pull in this guy and not pull in that guy. So
it could be, But I would say if they want to probably retain most of the photographers that work for them, they'd want to, give the photographers as much, room as possible to do
you
their
would
own
think,
stuff.
hopefully. And the part that drives me crazy with those booths, like they've got the props there, they've got like the fuzzy necklace and the hat and the dopey glasses and the horn. And I just sit there and go like why does everybody engage in that? Like, okay, it's like you're supposed to do it. Like, in other words, I don't put a lot of salt on my food. Okay, I go to every restaurant, there's a salt shaker on the table. I don't use it. I don't use it just because it's there. I'm not that big on salt. I don't put it on the food. Yeah. When I go to take the picture, I took a picture with me and my wife. We took one together, just us. I don't have a reason to take a picture in a goofy hat. Like, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't represent that goofy night that I was wearing the hat. It's a hat I picked up off a table 30 seconds ago, and I'm going to take off when I finish the picture. I don't want a picture of me with a goofy hat. And what this photographer was doing, who was running the booth, if you can call that a photographer, I don't know, booth operator?
Booth operator.
Okay, whatever you call a person. So, and it was great. They were printing out 2 copies of the pictures. So they give one to you, and then they say the other one's going to go in the book for the bride, and the bride and groom, I guess. But if everybody takes pictures with the same 9 props, how ridiculous is it going to look when you're looking through the book? Yeah. And then, like, here's your Aunt Bobby who flew in from Kansas that you only see once every 5 or 10 years. And you could have had this really cool picture when he came to your wedding, but instead you've got a picture of him wearing a dopey hat.
Yeah.
That means nothing to you. It doesn't represent Uncle Bobby. And then you turn the page, not even turn the page because they're all on the same page, they're little pictures. And then right next to him is me wearing the same dopey hat. And then there's your other brother wearing the same dopey hat. Like,
yeah, it's weird. I never understood those things either, like the props and the little horns and the shakers or whatever. I guess just a way to symbolize having fun.
Yeah, but it's just so silly.
Yeah.
Like, it's so stupid. And like my daughter, she just graduated to 5th grade, and they had a prom, and they had those props there for her. Okay, maybe it makes sense. She's 10 years old.
Yeah.
But at a wedding, as a full-grown man, why am I standing here wearing a dopey hat and some goofy glasses? It's the silliest thing ever.
You got to fit that mold of having fun. If you're not wearing a goofy hat or blowing on a horn that makes a really weird noise, then maybe you're not having enough fun.
Right. Yeah. It drives that. I don't. Yeah. I mean, I'm not usually having fun in any given situation anyway, so I think that's why I don't need it. All right. But anyway, so that was my. The last thing I shot was the few pictures at the wedding.
And how did those come out?
They came out really nice. Yeah, I sent it to her. Yeah, they came out nice. Again, it wasn't that much that I shot, but they did come out nice. It was a really good location in Brooklyn where you could see all of Manhattan.
Oh, nice.
And I thought that was cool, So the other thing that was driving me crazy, because you can pretty much be assured if I do a podcast, I have something to say. Because if I can't think of anything to say, then we don't do a podcast. But there was an article on a blog from a guy named Digi Lloyd. I guess that's how you pronounce it. And the article was titled, Sony A7R, is it the death knell for Leica M? And he was basically trying to make the point that the Sony A7R is so great, I guess, that it kind of signals like the death of Leica. And
I'm assuming he means that the new one, the A7R2?
Yeah, that was it. Correct.
The 46
Correct.
megapixel one?
Correct, which is an amazing camera.
Yeah, it is.
But the article drove me, that kind of stuff drives me crazy. Like, I know I'm crazy when I'm like looking at stuff like this and going crazy, but some of the stuff that the article said, so he was complaining about different things with Leica and how Sony's doing better. And at one point, the article said, Leica is actively devaluing my M investment, not just with its failure to innovate, but along with a long-standing Leica M rebate of 12%, along with huge oversupply. Leica M lenses have lost considerable value, as has the Leica M240. So he was faulting Leica for giving a 12% discount on the product.
Well, that's I mean, I have to,
You're from a camera store.
Yeah.
Feel free. Hey, let me say one thing good about this podcast. Any opinion is valid. You do not have to agree with me.
Well, here's the thing. So I know you're a big Leica fanboy, and
Yes.
I'm a Leica fanboy. I don't own a Leica, unfortunately, and I will one day, be it film or digital. But I find that the majority of people who come in and purchase Leica cameras or online who talk about Leica like that usually have an excess of expendable income to begin with. Usually. So when I hear this guy saying, well, you're devaluing my M system and my M glass, I don't believe that, because I still see, 35 millimeter f1.4 Summilux lenses going for $6,000 new, $5,000 new. And to me, that's just as expensive as they are brand new. Even if you look at a Summicron or lower supposedly quality glass from Leica, I mean, Leica is probably one of the only companies in the photo industry that has retained the value, even if it's been worn.
To a large degree.
Yes.
But the idea, though, that the company is doing something wrong by dropping it 12%, like as if they should keep the price high just to keep the value high. Like if they need to lower the price because it's not selling, or they need to lower the price because the dollar has changed, for whatever reason, it is a beautiful thing. It's a fantastic thing. Leica's job is to make a good camera. Their job is not to keep your investment. A camera is not an investment. You're never going to go to a financial planner. I interviewed a financial planner the other day. I put it up on this thing called LinkedIn Pulse, a guy named James Towns, and he talked all about finances and how to prepare for the future. I guarantee if I talk to this man straight for 3 days, he's never going to say, and buy a camera as a good investment. It's nonsensical to me. To look at it that way. And as far as devaluing, I mean, to me, we're in like this really amazing time, because what's going on is the Leica value is lower than it has ever been.
Yes,
like you said,
true.
new is still high, because even 12%, I had put up on Facebook one time, like the Leica Noctilux is $1,000 off.
Yep.
Because it's 12% off.
Yeah.
Like,
it's 12% off a $10,000 lens.
right. So it's insane. But the used stuff is dropping in price because a lot of people are selling Leicas, and they're realizing that there are things they like about the Sony camera. But what's also happening at the same time is a ton of people are selling Nikon and Canon bodies, going to Fuji and going to Sony, right? D800s are all over the place.
D800s,
$1,500.
D800Es. The prices on all the used market for a lot of for not just Leica, but for all manufacturers has come down a lot.
Correct.
And you see that a lot. Like the only camera, Leica, for example, their film bodies still retained a ton of value, considering we're not in the film age anymore. I mean, their M6s and M7s and their M5s and M3s, we're still going for over $1,000 for a body for a film camera. I'm one of the only people that I know that still shoots film, and I mean, now you're starting to see those prices come down into sub-$1,000 categories. Right. But I mean, that alone shows you that Leica isn't losing its value.
Everything is, and you and I have talked before about like the Fuji cameras. You can get an XE1 now, same chip as an XE2, minor changes between the two cameras. XE1 will run you between $250 and $300 used. That's incredible.
I mean, that's the same chip that's in the XT1.
Right. And the X Pro one is another camera that's around $400. These cameras were both like $1,000 new 3 years ago, and now they're $300. It's all dropping. And the funny thing is like I'm saying, a lot of people are, not a lot, but some people are selling Nikons and Canons to look out to try Fuji and Fuji and Sony. But at the same time, there are people who've bought those systems and they realize, you know, this doesn't suit my needs. I was better off with a Nikon. So they end up selling those too. The point is, it is a buyer's market for used gear right now.
Yep, this is the best time to buy used gear.
Best time in the world. You can get a D800 dirt cheap, you can get a Fuji, all of it. So to stand there and complain about Leica devaluing themselves doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't.
Well, it's not them devaluing themselves. It's Sony being the aggressor and Sony innovating with this technology and Fuji. So it's not like Leica is going backwards and taking things away from their products. They're just, you know, Sony just has the edge right now with the new technology. And to a point, I kind of see why Leica isn't doing that, because Leica is a very traditional company. They've changed very little over the years. They're one of the only companies that have continued to use the same mount for the last 50 years or more.
It's amazing.
With their lens, right?
That's incredible.
You can go from film body to digital body and keep all your glass and never have to worry about it. You can go from an M3 to the new M240 and use all your glass.
Right, and it's funny because I've talked about this before. I showed it one time on the podcast where it's funny because if you figure the camera has really three sides. You have the front of the camera, the top of the camera, and the back of the camera. And if you're looking at, say, an M3 versus what would be called an M10, if they use that nomenclature for the newest model, you would see that there are fewer controls on the front of the M10 and fewer controls on top of the M10. On the back, there's more controls, but they're just one nice, neat row of buttons in one dial, very clean and neat. But they've actually removed buttons from cameras, and no one has done that but Leica, which is cool. But in the article that he was writing, there's another part that really got me. So he quoted a person who had written to him, and out of context, of course, but this is what the person said. So the person said, the M9 was brilliant, the M240 was a sidestep. Who knows when the next will come, and I don't expect it to be much better. I really need 50 megapixels, and I have no use or interest in a 24 megapixel camera anymore. And I read that statement, and I'm like, how can you make a statement, I really need 50 megapixels, without qualifying it? Because if you write that, it's you're in one of two camps. Either you are a high-level photographer who has serious advertising and commercial clients, and your clients really know digital files, and they're telling you, like, we'll deliver it in this color space and all that. You're not like just some regular editorial photographer. You're not shooting like weddings or boudoir glamour. You're dealing with art directors who've had a conversation with you before the shoot about the type of file you're producing. And if that's the camp you're in, you're probably not on a DSLR anyway.
And you're definitely not using a Leica.
You sure as hell were not on a Leica for this work to begin with. The other category you're in is you're a guy who shoots nothing, who shoots bookcases and puts them on the internet and blows up the picture.
And gets a lot of likes.
Yeah, and gets a bunch of likes for
his
his bookcase pictures. And you study all the pixels, and then you compare the bookcase photo with your D800 with your Leica, and then you declare that this file is inferior. But the idea that you need 50 megapixels, that statement for me cannot go in a blog post in 2015 without qualification. You've got to prove to me.
Over.
They are.
There's no need. Like you said, you have to be in a very specific kind of photographer to say, I need this many megapixels. And if that's the case, if you're writing a blog post complaining about Leica, how they're not giving you a big enough sensor, then you're obviously not doing something right, because the biggest thing in photo that I've learned is you need to use the right tool for the right job. Right? You wouldn't bring a Leica to be a wedding photographer. You'd use a DSLR because it's fast and accurate. If you're the kind of photographer that needs 50 megapixels for a shoot, then you're probably going to be using a Hasselblad or a Phase 1.
Correct. And I think there's a Pentax now that's about $6,000 medium format. Like, you're not looking at these 35 millimeter equivalent cameras to say you need, but the idea that someone would write a blog post and quote someone saying, like, I need 50 megapixels, and we don't know who this guy is, and then use that as evidence that Leica is doing something wrong with a 24 megapixel camera. If that's the case, Fuji should just throw all their cameras away because they're at 16. Every Fuji should just go right in the garbage. If 24 is not enough, well, what the hell are we going to do at 16?
My X100T is 16 megapixels. It shoots great JPEGs out of the camera, but the RAWs are great, and I find that when I work on them, they look great. I've used the XT1 from Fuji. Still 16 megapixels,
Right.
X-Trans sensor. It's fantastic.
Right.
You know, and we compared our files from your
Right.
Leica and my Fuji,
Right.
and they're very good.
Well, this is funny because we were hanging out the other day on my porch, and then you had your X100T.
Yep.
Okay, and I had my M240 with 35 millimeter f2 lens. The lenses are basically equivalent. I took a quick picture of you with your camera, took a quick picture of you with my camera. I put them up into Photo Mechanic, and we kind of A/B'd them. I didn't tell you which one is which, and I said, which one do you like is better? Which one do you like better? You took your time. You looked at them at full size and at the fit to screen size, and you actually liked the Fuji better.
Yep.
You thought that was the Leica file.
I thought it was the Leica file, but it was the Fuji file.
I said two questions. I said, which one do you like better, and which one is the Leica file? And then you went, that's the Leica file, and I like it better. And you were actually wrong, which was good for you because you actually liked your camera better.
Yeah.
And then I processed my file and showed it to you, and I think my file looked a lot better.
Yeah.
But out of the camera, your camera killed my camera. Your camera was sharper.
Well,
it was just nicer.
Yeah. Well, in all fairness, Fuji uses simulations from. I don't know if we were looking at the RAWs or the JPEGs.
We were looking at the JPEG.
Okay,
really.
so then my JPEG had a little bit of an advantage because it probably had the classic Chrome simulation on, because you can't.
I remember that.
Yeah, you can't turn that off. You're always in some kind of simulation for JPEGs.
Right.
It's either like, I think the default is like Velvia, and then if not, it's classic Chrome. Which classic Chrome I like because it looks the most neutral. It gives you the most neutral colors.
Right. And the other thing too is that yours is cheating in the sense that that lens only has to be, that chip and lens are just perfect for each other.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be all purpose. So yeah, that combination is beautiful. And at 1/7, I guess, or 1/6 the price of the Leica.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful, amazing camera. But to make a statement like, I'm sick of 24 megapixels, it's not enough, when you can look at a Fuji at 16 or 18, I forgot what it is now. But
It's 16.
16, it's just silly. And to allow a statement like that unqualified really drives me crazy. But the main thing that irks me about this is like this attitude that we should all be on the camera that is the best camera in a mathematical sense. I think that's a dangerous mentality, and I don't think it's the correct mentality.
I agree.
Because if you consider yourself an artist, like if you consider yourself a worker, it doesn't matter what tool you use. It's just like, I want to get my check, I want to go home and watch TV.
Yeah.
If you consider yourself an artist, the tool is important.
Very.
And the way you pick it is not just a matter of specs. It just isn't, because if you look at a guy who's a poet, okay, like, and let's say he's writing a poem. Robert Frost is trying to write that poem about the road diverged in the woods, and I can only take one path, and I took the one less traveled by. He could communicate that information very quickly if he didn't make it rhyme. If he didn't make it a poem, if he just wrote like, I saw two roads, I took the one no one else took, and that made my life better. Done. Go home. But he's a poet. So he has a craft of poetry. He uses a certain tool, which is rhyming these words to tell his story. You can't go up to him and say, hey, dude, if you don't make it rhyme, you can get this done much quicker and more efficiently.
Right.
Or if you start the rhyme, you go, roses are red, violets are blue. Okay, now you've limited yourself because the next line has to end with something that rhymes with blue. Yeah. You've eliminated 99% of the words in the English language, and you forced yourself to only use these words that rhyme with blue. Mm-hmm. But you can't say to the poet, like, dude, that's really stupid. You know, I don't make things rhyme because I can use any word. It just doesn't work like that. You don't go up to a sculptor and say, you know, you could create an image of this person much faster if you just took a picture with your phone. Why are you carving it out with a chisel and hammer?
Right.
If someone's gear is doing the job and it works and they're connected to it, that's the gear they should be on. Yeah. It's not a matter of like, well, Leica sucks because Sony has made a 46. Well, what did Canon make?
Canon, they made the 50 megapixel 5 DS and DSR.
Right. Now, again, that's a great camera. And if you're buying a camera for the first time today, run out and buy it.
Nikon still beats it in sharpness, though.
Yeah, I've seen these tests everybody's talking about. But if you're using a 24 megapixel and it does the job you need it to do, then it doesn't really matter. Yeah. And I look at like my wife, because my wife is the most non-technical person you're going to meet. And she's on an iPhone 5. She loves the phone. She's on the phone all day. I'm constantly telling her, like, just put the phone down. Just be in the moment. Like, she's constantly on the phone. But she does not care about the iPhone 6. We went to the store about a week after the 6 came out to get my daughter a 5. And I'm like saying, look, here's the 6. And she's like, okay. And she's back to a 5, looking at her Instagram. She doesn't care. And I think in a lot of ways that's the right attitude, because if this phone is doing what she needs it to do, what difference does it make what the 6 is doing? She's not thinking her life is going to be better or that she needs a 6.
Yeah.
She's content with the 5. And I think that's a smart way to be.
I
Unlike, you know, this guy who's the guy who wrote the blog post who's kind of implying like, well, because Sony's making a better camera, Leica is dead. No. If someone like myself loves the camera and is getting good results and making his money with the camera, it's not dead. And that person should continue using that system, you know. And the last thing I'll say on this is I think no one says it better than David Duchemin, which I think you may have watched that little thing. He has a video. It's about 2 minutes long. It's called something like The Photographer's Manifesto.
Yeah.
Something, right? What did you get from that? Because I love that little piece.
He spoke a lot about seeing your image and wanting, he very much put photography in the art category as, you know, you have to, you know, it's not about the tool that you use, it's about what you see and how you make it come to life with a tool. But he was very clear that it doesn't matter what kind of camera you use, it's just about what you want to create. Right,
and he says things in it like, my camera doesn't have to be new to take good photographs.
And that's true.
I don't want my photographs to be about megapixels. I want them to be about the story. And I'm paraphrasing him. I don't want to do him injustice, but that's what I got from the video. It's that's just the idea of like, it's not about that. It's not about oversampling and anti-aliasing and megapixels. It's about like what's in front of the camera. And one of the reasons I love my Leica, because it reminds me, every time I use it, it helps me remember 99.9% of photography is what is in front of the camera. That's what matters more than anything else.
That's all that matters, really, I think.
It's all that matters. What's in front of the camera. And for me, sometimes there's nothing in front of the camera. And the fact that I've got a $7,000 camera doesn't help me at all. And there's times that I've got some great stuff in front of my camera and I'm able to produce some great photos with the tool I like. And to some degree, we actually should be living in a cave and not looking at what the competition is doing as long as the tool works for us. And if you look up, you know, you Google it, I don't know the guy who wrote Game of Thrones, whatever his name is.
George R.R. Martin.
George R. Martin. He's on a talk show. I think it's Conan O'Brien. And he says that Conan O'Brien brings up the fact that George R. Martin writes the Game of Thrones books on an old MS-DOS computer.
Yep.
He doesn't use a modern, like, iMac type thing. Did you see the clip?
I did.
Right. And do you remember what he said? He says, why did Conan says, I think it's Conan, says, why do you use the old computer? And do you remember what he says?
Something about being distracted or something like that.
He says, it does everything I want it to do, and it doesn't do anything else.
Yeah.
How brilliant is that?
It's great.
How brilliant is that?
Yeah, and I think that's what makes Leica so great, because it's they make a very simple camera that gets the job done as long as you know how to use it.
Right. For that person, for me,
and it does it well.
For if that's you, like for me, it does. Now, for other people, they would say it doesn't do what I wanted to do because it doesn't autofocus. Okay, don't use that tool. But if for you that applies to whatever tool you're using, yeah, be in a cave. Don't worry about what's coming out from Sony and Canon, and just use that tool. Yeah. But don't do like this guy and kind of go, well, Leica now sucks because Sony is making a better product. It's not about the better product. It's about, is your product good enough, and are you getting good results, and are you connected to that product? Are you doing what David Duchemin says about like connecting to the story and the meaning of your photographs rather than the gear? Okay, so
sure.
But you and I had something kind of interesting recently now, okay? Because you and I kind of simultaneously came across the same thing. I don't know how long you've been familiar with Creative Live, but I've actually checked out Creative Live from the very first broadcast they ever did, the Vincent LaFerré one.
I'm pretty sure you turned me on to Creative Live.
Oh, cool.
Pretty sure.
There you go. Cool. So I've watched some of them, and I get in these moods where like I kind of get addicted to Creative Live for a couple of days, and I'm looking at what they're broadcasting, and I'm watching it, and like I don't want to leave the house, because if you're not familiar with what this is, it's a website called creativelive.com. And what they'll do is they'll broadcast an educational presentation. It might be like how to use studio lights in photography. It might be how to market yourself on Instagram. It's a quite a wide variety of topics. And the presentation can be as long as like 6 hours a day. So it's kind of hard to watch it all at the same time, but it's being broadcast for free, which is cool. And it's usually like 2 days, sometimes 3 days. And the thing is if you want to own it so you can watch all of it and watch it at your convenience, then you can buy it. The price is usually like $100. Sometimes it's as low as like $70. Sometimes as high as like $125. Usually around $100. But I'll get times I kind of get addicted to Creative Live. Like 3 days, I'm just watching all of them, and they're broadcasting 2 things at the same time that I want to see, and I'm all into it. And then other times, I'll go like 6 months without even glancing. I don't care what they're doing, and I'll see it come up on like my Facebook, and I'm like, I don't fucking care what Creative Live is doing. I'm trying to do something on my own. So I kind of go, back and forth with it. But I came across a Sue Bryce presentation about portrait photography.
Yeah.
And I contacted you because I thought it was kind of interesting about it. And you said to me that you had also come across it and you were considering buying this 28 days product.
Yeah.
And I looked at 28 days and I said, I think I'm going to buy Creative 28 days. And we both ended up buying the same thing.
Yeah.
28 days. So I said, this is kind of cool. Like, we both have the same product, whatever you call it. Let's talk about it a bit. But I figured rather than give away the content, because I don't want to take something somebody's selling and then come up here and give out the information. I said, why don't we talk about like the introductory video? Don't you love New York? It's like every 20 minutes.
Sirens.
More sirens. This is Times Square, people, okay?
Yep.
It's way cleaned up, but every now and then I guess something does still go on here.
It's still a little grimy, if you know where to look.
Right. So anyway, this program is called 28 Days, right? And I watched the first like 2 hours of it, which were kind of like introductory, and I found a lot of really good information in it. But can you just give us like an overview of what is 28 days? What is supposed to happen? Why is it called 28 days? Okay. What's supposed to happen?
Well, 28 days, according to Sue Bryce, is the method in which she used to teach her assistants in her studio, I believe in New Zealand at the time, how to become photographers. They essentially were not photographers at all. One of them was actually a client she had who came in for a photo shoot and ended up hiring her and taught her how to be a photographer from day zero, where she's never held presumably a DSLR in her life, to turning over sales and making money for Sue's studio. So the whole idea of this Creative Live session was in the course of 28 days, she's going to teach you the same thing she taught her assistants at the time, and she's provided you with PDFs on posing, how to make sales of your prints, and how to, as I believe it's called upselling, a shoot, and just the whole idea and theory of where you go, how you attract a client, bring them in, make them comfortable, shoot them, and then sell to them, and how to create a formula so that you can make that easy and replicate it every time and increase your profits.
Right, and it's interesting because it kind of covers both, the marketing, like you're saying, and the actual shooting.
Yes.
And that 28 days, it's at least an hour per day. So it's at least 28 hours, but it's actually more from what I can see. Some days have like more than an hour. And I think it went to like 33 days instead of 28 days. So it's actually a lot of content, and it was on $300, although it went on sale at one point, or if you got it for the lower price, but I got it for the $300.
Yeah.
Did you get it at the lower price, or did you get it when it was lower than $300, or did you get it at $300?
I think I got it when it was a little lower than $300.
Okay, yeah, because it went on sale for $200 at one point. So, so you got to keep looking at Creative Live. If you do like me and tune out Creative Live for 6 months, you can get burned. Okay, so
you'll miss out on the deals.
Yeah, so pay attention. All right, but in any event, so the first hour of it was kind of this overview. She kind of went through her business, how she went from like working in the studio to opening her own, and some of her philosophy. And I thought a lot of stuff she said was interesting that she talked about that kind of made me think, especially since my work doesn't tend to be regular people. 90% of my work is like a company, is, a record label or a magazine where I'm dealing with like an art director or someone who's cutting a check that's not coming out of their own pocket. So it's very different than her business model. But what are some of the things you got from watching that first hour of the presentation? I got a lot from it. So what's some stuff you got?
I got a lot of stuff from it. It's weird because I come from a different place than you do, I would think, and I come from a different place that she comes from, where it's more like she made it very clear that what she's going to teach you is very business oriented. Very rarely does she mention what she does as art. For me, I come from, I studied photography in school. I'm a big fan of photography as an art, street photography, fine art, like that kind of stuff. So for her to go ahead and talk about, making it a formula, making it easy, something you can replicate over and over again, it was very interesting, the fact that she has a very set system of poses, a very set system of ideas of how the person that you're photographing is a regular person like you who wants to get a photo of themselves to make themselves feel good, or a family portrait, something like that. It was very, very different from what I'm used to.
Right. And it was interesting because she, in that particular part where she's trying to say, look, we're not making art. We've got a formula. We've got a system of like 20 poses, and we're just going to run through them, pop, 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 pop. It actually reminded me of Doug Gordon. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He's someone who, he's like I think he may be a Nikon ambassador or whatever. He does a lot of weddings. He's based in Long Island. He's been on Creative Live a few times, but he got caught up in some kind of scandal. I'm not sure what it was.
Oh boy.
I know one of the things was about blog posts on his blog being possibly plagiarized from other blogs.
That's weird.
Yeah, but I think it might have been a thing where he had other people writing his blog.
Oh, okay.
So maybe they're just on the web pulling crap in and throwing it up there, but whatever. I'm not sure, but he kind of has become, I don't know, like he's gotten he hasn't been given access to certain educational platforms anymore.
Okay.
So like, I don't think he's on Creative Live. I suspect if you search Doug Gordon on Creative Live, I suspect they don't even sell his stuff anymore.
That's unfortunate.
And I don't think he hasn't been on in a while, I don't think. And I know there's been like controversy with people saying, well, don't let him present anymore. But his personality could not be more different from hers, because he comes across as very like forceful and overpowering.
Yeah.
But the one thing that reminded me of his presentation and hers was this idea of, it's okay if I make all the images the same. Because he said, people come to me and photographers will say to me, aren't you worried about a client saying, oh, my wedding looks like her wedding? And he's like, that's fine. They can come to me and say it, because her wedding looked great and your wedding looks great now too. I'm glad all my weddings look the same because they're all great. And I think that's where she's coming from, this idea of like, I know how to pose a body. So when you come in, I'm going to pose you just like I posed her. There's only a certain amount of poses for a human body. Why not just do them? So I thought that was an interesting parallel with Doug Gordon, even though her personality wasn't the same, and he does weddings and she doesn't do weddings.
I mean, she made it very clear, don't try to reinvent the wheel every time you have a shoot.
So what else jumped out at you from the hour-long video? Anything that you agreed with, disagreed with, just anything at all?
Well, just the fact that she brings up mental blocks a lot, and I think a lot of us deal with that, whether it be in photography or anything else. There's always something, a little voice in your head that keeps you from wanting to try something or do something, or that makes you procrastinate. And I just found that she brings that all to the forefront with her introductory video, saying that, the only thing that's really stopping you is you.
Yeah, what's funny, one of the things that she said that I thought was kind of funny was she talked about how, like, she'll say, like, you guys, you do this or you do that. And a lot of times she is talking to me. I wish she weren't, after as many years in business as I have been, but sometimes she is talking to me when she says it. But she says, 1 minute and again, I'm paraphrasing, this is my interpretation of it. But she says, like, 1 minute you guys are looking at, like, say, Facebook and going like, why is he getting work? He sucks. Or why is he getting that job? He's horrible. I'm better than him. And then the next minute you're thinking to yourself, all my work sucks. I'm horrible at this. I'm the worst photographer in the world. And I have to admit, I go through those exact emotions, alternating between I am better than this person and other times thinking, my God, I don't have a good picture that I've taken in my life that I want to put up on Instagram or whatever. And we definitely can go the extremes of those emotions, and neither is helpful to you in building a career or producing good photographs.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I haven't been in professional photography as long as you have, but I definitely know what it's like to look at my photos and then go online or look at another photographer that I follow that maybe isn't a pro, but who's very good at it, and it makes me feel kind of weird saying, like, well, why are they getting such good shots? Why are they getting all these, like, kind of smaller jobs, and it's so hard for me to get it? And it kind of messes with you a little bit.
Right. And I think sometimes, though, like, if you compare yourself to an individual, you may be even with them, but if you compare yourself to a group collectively, you're always going to lose. Meaning, if like, I'm going to shoot this jiu-jitsu tournament tomorrow, which I guess you'll probably be at this thing. So if I look at my best shot versus the best shot taken at the tournament, I'm probably going to lose because there'll be 10 other guys shooting the tournament. Now, if I went neck and neck with this other guy, then maybe we would be even. Maybe I'd beat him. Maybe he'd beat me. But if you're looking collectively at what was produced at something you shot, or just a category like a girl in a bikini on a beach, you're always going to lose that because 300 guys shot that yesterday and one of them took a better picture than you. But overall, I think, like we said with the gear, to some degree you should be in a cave and not be comparing yourself like that. I'm just saying that, yeah, sometimes I do that, just like she said in the video, but I'm not trying to say that that's a good way to be or that you should operate that way.
Yeah.
But what else jumped out at you when you're watching this?
Well, the fact that she was that selling prints is a very big thing for her business, especially nowadays. Everything's online, everything's digital. You know, people really don't. I don't know many people who request prints. Like, if you do a shoot, everybody wants it digital so they can throw it up on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. But she was very big on knowing what shots you're going to take and what shots you're going to sell, shooting to sell a print.
Yeah, and the thing for me is that, like, as far like what I would not mind if I were doing more regular people business as opposed to like corporate clients. I like the idea of a giant print because I feel it's something you can't get from your phone.
Yeah.
And like I have this picture of my wife on the wall. I don't know how big it is, but it's huge. It was really the first good picture I took with a Leica, so it was very special to me. It was my wife, and it was a camera. You know, I love my wife. I love my camera. They kind of just went hand in hand in this picture. I love the picture, and it's giant. And it's like that's what I would love to give every regular person I shot that I photographed, a giant picture.
Yeah.
But on the other Sue Bryce thing I watched, they were giving people pictures that were 7x10s in like an 11x14 frame. But the actual image was only 7x10, so I thought it was odd that they have such small prints, because I would always think the larger prints would be impressive. But they're making a lot of money. She's making a lot of money selling prints, but they're not as big as I would have thought they would be.
It very much seems like she's aiming for what you're hanging on the wall, what you're keeping on top of a shelf, you know, things that you can easily buy frames for at like IKEA.
Well, the one that she was showing was something called a folio box. And it's like 10 pictures in a box, and it's only 11x14, as I said, but the image is 7x10.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Small.
I've seen that a little bit. I've seen that with wedding photographers will do that, or anniversary, like just party photography, I guess. My parents had a 25th anniversary party a couple years ago, and their photographer did the same thing, gave them like a little portfolio box. And it's funny because she calls it a folio box, and I didn't know if she meant like an album or like a portfolio. I wasn't sure what she meant. I
assumed she meant a portfolio box. Okay, that's what I figured it meant. But I just have an issue with a box because it's too hard to get the pictures out. I don't like things like caged up. I'm not into collecting things, and I'm not into like packaging. So I think everything should be used. So I want the pictures to be where people can see them. I don't want them to be inside of a box. But I am going to try a lot of what I'm going to go through this 28 days program because I bought it. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to try it. And I'm going to report at some point on this podcast how it goes for me. Even though some things, like you're saying, though, it's a little alien to me.
Yeah.
I never sell prints, and I certainly don't sell like 7x10-inch prints. If I'm selling a print,
you
I
don't like sell packages.
Big. I don't do that at all.
Yeah.
I don't do that at all, but it's going to be interesting to see where she goes with all of that.
Yeah. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how we both take on her idea of photography, because you and me shoot very different things. I mean, I would love to shoot the kind of things that you shoot, but I mean, I'm shooting on a much smaller scale. I'm doing like, I have a shoot coming up in about 2 weeks. I'm shooting this client who wants me to do like a themed shoot for her in a park. So I'm going to do that kind of shoot. And I mean, I guess there are things I can use from Sue Bryce that I will apply to that.
Oh, there'll definitely be stuff, without doubt, because the posing is going to be the same, whether she's on a park bench or in a studio with artificial lighting. That's not going to change. There's going to be a ton of stuff, particularly about how to market and how to sell to her. And what you said earlier about that mind state, because one of the things I picked up is she talks a lot about owning your worth. And on one of the parts I watched, and this could have been from the presentation, I think it was called Portrait something, I don't know, it was some other one that they presented this month, which is like July 2015. I forgot what it was called, damn it. But like the building, the portrait studio, something like that. But she talked about, owning your worth, and how like at one point in her career, she might like not look at the client when she set the price. She might look at the wall of pictures and go, well, these are $200. And she didn't have the ability to just look at the eye and go, the confidence to go, this is $200.
Yes.
And if someone said, well, why do you charge so much? To people just look back and go, that's what it's worth.
Yeah, that's
ability. She didn't have that.
That's a great point, because I actually was just thinking about that, because that's also another thing I think myself and a lot of people struggle with, especially when they're doing photographs that, that the person they're photographing is the one that hired them. Like, how do you, like, it's almost like, how do you have the nerve to say a session with me is $3,000? Like, because that's not a lot. That's not a little bit of money. That's, for most people, that's a good chunk of change.
Right.
So to say, it's going to be $3,000 for this photo shoot, and then if they question you, like, why should I pay you that much? You just have to know that that's how much you're worth. And if they don't believe that, then they're going to walk away. But if you exude the confidence to say this is how much it's worth. She says most times people would just be like, okay. And
Correct.
I think she's right, where you'd be surprised where how many people would be like, you're right, I'll pay it.
Right. And the other thing, too, is about people's money, and I'm definitely in this camp, is that it's very hard to be able to tell how someone else is going to spend their money.
Yep.
Like, I'm a person who will spend, you know, when I bought my Nikon D3X, it was $8,000. When I bought that camera, when I bought the M9, it was $7,000. When I bought the M240, it was $6,000. Okay, I'll spend that on that.
You might have a problem, Rick.
I definitely do. And my wife is in the room now, so, you know, she'll tell me if there's a problem with spending too much money on gear. She's sitting right over there. You can see her if you're watching YouTube. You can see her right there at the back of her looking at her phone, as I mentioned earlier. But the point is, like, I won't take a cab anywhere. I won't spend the $40. I have taken so much gear home on the subway. You would think, like, why don't you just jump in a cab?
Yeah.
But no, I'm carrying bags. I'm like, I'm not paying $40 on a cab. Yeah, cases and
lights.
And I got to, like, do 3 trips down the stairs with it all. But
Yep.
I don't want to spend the $40 on a cab. But the point of the story is like, you can't tell how people are going to spend their money. You might think, well, if this guy will spend $7,000 on a camera, of course he'll spend $40 on a cab. No,
not really.
I'll walk in the rain. I'm not spending the money on a cab. So
it's all about where you place the value, right? It's all about, like,
Right.
you don't think that the $40 for the trip from here to home is worth it.
Correct.
But the $7,000 for the newest Nikon that'll help you get your job done better, it's worth it.
Right. And
So
there
it's
may be this woman who says, you know, it's worth $3,000 to have these amazing photographs of me. And maybe she doesn't spend money on a vacation. Maybe she doesn't spend money on a nice car.
Yeah.
But this is where she puts her money. And we can't project what we would spend. You might not spend $3,000 on pictures.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean she won't. And I think getting out of your own self in that way is a big part of what she's trying to say.
It is. That's one of her big keys in her program, especially in the first introduction videos, is you have to get out of your own way. The only reason why you're not achieving what you want to achieve or making the amount of money you want to make is because you're probably in your own way and you don't see that you're in your own way. And she says once you learn to get out of your way, you're going to find much more success. And I mean, I've already seen it with some of the prints that I've sold and some of the shots that I've done. I've just, you know, I hate to say this, I hope nobody's watching, but nobody I know is watching. Sometimes I just pull the number out of my head and just, what's the worst I can say? No.
Right.
Okay. But, you know, you pull out a number and sometimes people will be like, yeah, sure. And sometimes they'll tell you, you know, no way, that's crazy.
Right.
You just have to try it. You'll never know unless you try.
And it's a hard thing for us to kind of determine the value of our own art sometimes if we're looking at it as art. And I know for me, I get this weird thing where if the photograph was easy for me to take, then I kind of think it's worth less. Because I look at it as a simple shot. And like I have this changing room in my studio, very small. It's like 3 or 4 square feet. It's natural light. I get fantastic shots there. But I look at them as easy shots because all I have to do is pick up the camera, go to like 250 and f2 at like ISO 400-ish, something in that area, and it's a great shot every time.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a lot of work. I can knock it out in like 90 seconds.
But that's part of the formula she's talking about.
That's kind of, but I look at it like, well, this shot was so easy, it can't be a great shot.
Yeah.
I have to go and like roll out a roll of paper and set up 6 lights and put a gel and do a bunch of checks and look at it on the computer. And if I do a lot of work, it's a better photograph and therefore it's worth more money. And that mindset is just really foolish.
Yeah, because in your mind, you're putting lots of effort into it, so it has to be a good shot, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Which is like saying,
that.
like, it's a good picture because it's a picture of my kid.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not a good mentality because it's wrong. That none of that matters. And she's talking about having a formula and still knowing that it's worth a lot of money, even though it's not, it's not a lot of work that she's necessarily doing to create the image because she's created that same image before.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny how she brings that stuff up. I mean, there's a lot of, I find a lot of pre-visualization in her talking and in what she's trying to tell you. Like one of her points is when she says when you're shooting, you need to know what's going to sell immediately. Like when you shoot, you need to shoot to sell, and you need to pre-visualize when you take this shot, this is going to be a print I'm going to try to sell them. This is going to be a shot I'm going to try to sell them. This may not be, you know, and there's lots of little tips about, you know, posing and hand posing and how every time she photographs, she attempts to change hand position because she makes some point about how hand positioning and hand posing will ruin a shot or make a shot.
Right.
You know, awkward hand posing looks weird. You know?
Right.
It looks
right.
like you
and
might be
you should know
holding
how to
something.
do it as a professional because they don't know what to do with their hands. I don't care who it is, unless it's a real agency model. No one knows what to do with their hands. And you should have the answer and not be, well, I don't know, try them here. Yeah, it's an interesting
do you see that a lot when you're shooting models and stuff? Do you see where you want their hands before you take the shot?
No, I've usually adopt a very different approach from her. And I'm not going to say that my approach is the right approach. I'm just saying it's the approach that I use. But generally, I try not to be formulaic. And a lot of times I try to figure out how I'm going to light it. When I get to the studio is when I just look at it and go, well, let me try this or let me try that. Or I don't have a lot of just go-to poses. I like that looseness of it, but I am interested in trying to do what she does. I'm going to make a point of doing these lessons and just see how these lessons affect me. And I love the time we're in because there is so much you can learn. Yeah. And I find I love learning it. And you and I both do jujitsu, and I don't want to get too sidetracked into jujitsu, but it's like, for my own jiu-jitsu training, I practice under a teacher named Marcelo Garcia, widely considered one of the greatest who has ever practiced Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And I love what he teaches, and I practice what he teaches 2 or 3 times a week when I go to his classes. And at the same time, I practice another system called 10th Planet, which doesn't have a lot of overlap with him, but I love that system. And I practice something called Gracie Combatives because I love that system, and it doesn't overlap with the other 2. I love it all. And I wish I had time to do all of it every day of my life. So it's the same with photography, where I have the way I do things, and I love the way I do, and it has worked very well for me to this point of quitting my job 15 years ago and still being in business and being in this studio for 10 years in Times Square. But at the same time, I want to know what she's doing, and I want to try it, and I want to incorporate what she is doing into my photography because I don't have an axe to grind. I'm not trying to prove that the way John Ricard does it in 2015 is the only way to do it. Yeah. I never thought there'd be a time I'd be in business and not buy film. And I don't buy film. So I'm open to wherever it goes, and I want to see what happens as I pursue this program.
Yeah, for sure. She also mentioned one thing I wanted to get your take on. What did you think what did you think about when she said about the horizontal portraits? Because most people, when they do portraiture, it's all vertical shots. And she made a fairly big deal about, learning to photograph horizontal with portraiture. What did you think about that?
See, for me, when I'm doing anything that's along the lines of editorial, most of the time I'm capturing them both, but it's definitely harder to get the horizontal portrait, especially in a studio, because you don't really have backgrounds. Yeah. Even though I think she uses like a couch a lot of times and like the window. Yeah. If it were up to me, I would shoot everything on white and I would have no backgrounds.
Yeah. Well, a lot of her portraits in her studio look like they have like art backdrops. Like, see, there was one that it looks almost like you're in a big library, like a whole old Victorian library, and then she has an old Victorian couch, and she'll pose the person sitting on the couch with the backdrop. So I think that's where she's coming from with the
but though she created an element to put horizontal. I saw, though, when I was at this boudoir workshop one time at Unique Photo that I went to, and apparently they sell like fake bed backdrops. Like if you shoot it like f2, it goes out of focus and it looks like a bed. That's funny. You can have the girl like in the studio and it looks like you're in like a bedroom. That's funny, right?
That's really funny, actually. Yeah. I mean, there's no limits, I guess, these days, right? Yeah. I mean, maybe you could green screen it if you really wanted to, and just superimpose it in the background.
Right. And another point that she made that I wish I did was she talked about how in order to do this, you should love it, which I do love it. But she said, if you love it, you should be doing it every single day. And I don't do it every day. I talked on the last podcast about trying to do this 365 project, and I bailed on it after like 5 months or so. Didn't like carrying the camera. I didn't like the hassle of organizing. It was just a bunch of stuff, but just organizing all the images at the end of the week, picking out the best 7 shots, and then like coming up with the caption and then putting them on the phone to upload them to Storehouse, which is where I was showcasing that work. Just the whole process became so tedious, so much work. It was hours of work to just get the 7 shots on like Sunday night or Monday morning, organize them, put them in a folder on the phone, and get them from the phone onto Storehouse. It's just so tedious. And even carrying the camera all day, I didn't enjoy carrying it every day.
It's funny you mentioned that. I mean, I would carry my camera. I mean, I've been carrying my camera with me. I made a goal to start doing that at the beginning of 2015. And every single day since January 1st, I've carried a camera with me.
That's cool.
Every single day. I just got the Fuji X100T. And that's great, but I was carrying around my film camera for the first couple months. Right. And
you should look into this Storehouse. It's called. It looks like Instagram, except when you click that picture. Imagine you're looking at Instagram, but when you're on Storehouse, when you click the picture, you're going to go to what looks like a blog post that might have 5 or 6 photographs. That could be a little bit large. They could be small. You can have text. You can have video. You can put a link in there. So it's kind of like having an Instagram blog. It's a really, really nice platform. Like Instagram, it's completely free. But for me, I don't really like working on the phone. I'd
Yeah.
rather do it from the computer. But this is a platform that only works from the phone.
I see.
So for me, it wasn't really fun to sit there and organize these 7 shots. And every time you turn around, it's Monday, and you're like, I got to put the 7 up. I got to put the 7 up. And it was just such a nightmare for me. But if you've been carrying the camera, you might want to try that.
Yeah, I mean, I post.
Look into Storehouse.
My goal is to post one photo every single day on Instagram. I shoot throughout, I shoot every single day, whether it be film or digital. And, as long as I get one image that I'm happy with the day, I'll post it. Sometimes I skip Saturday because I find Saturday nobody really looks at their phone.
Right.
And I hate to sound like all I care about is the likes.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if no one's looking at their phone, no one's gonna look at your picture. So I tend to not post on Saturdays unless it's something I think is extremely good.
Right. Well, sirens are back. This is the 3rd time because every 20 minutes. But that was another reason for me why I didn't like doing the 365 project was no one really cared about it, which really shouldn't factor into the equation. It should just be like, well, I'm doing this for me. But in reality, I want someone to see it, and it's a lot more fun for me to do it if people are like, where did you take that picture or something? But if no one's reacting to it, it just kind of felt like work to do it. Like I kind of wish I could do it, but I just didn't enjoy it. Like it might be better for me to be doing like a 90-day project, then take 2 months off, do 90 days again, take 2 months off, something like that. But I just found that because I don't like to carry things, and a lot of times I'll leave the house and I'm not carrying anything. And I know everybody loves to carry stuff, but it's just not me. I don't carry a bag everywhere I go. I don't bring a lot of stuff. I like to be free and loose, and the camera didn't allow me to do that.
It is an extra thing to look at, to keep account of while you're out.
Oh, yeah, and then I have this rule. What I do is I never take it off. Like when I go out with it, like if I'm in a restaurant or something, I'll loop it into my belt sometimes, or I'll put like a slip knot onto my belt, or I'll like loop it into my foot or something and leave it on the floor, but I never just put it on a table where it's not connected to me.
Same.
So I become very conscious of having the camera. It never really disappears for me. And the M240 is a rather heavy camera. It's relatively small, but it is heavy. Yes, you know you have it. You're very conscious you have it. But it is a durable camera. I got to admit, I'm now up to 1 year with that camera. It has been in for service 0 times.
How many times has your M9 been in for service?
It's in service right now. And I said to you one time, and it wasn't a joke, I keep a box to ship it back. The box that they sent it in, it stays. I never throw that box away. It stays in the closet. So whenever I need to send that camera back, I've got like bubble wrap and a box. The address is in my phone. I'm always ready to send that camera back at the drop of a hat.
You start putting little like counter marks on the box every time you send it into Germany.
Every time it goes
just
in.
one, 2, 3
like
scratches.
Like a World War II bomber.
Yep.
I
Just how many times it's been sent back.
Right. So another point that I like that she said that connected to me was she says, when she first started the business especially, she would wake up in the morning and it'd be this point in the day where she would vacuum her house. And it was the only time of day where she was completely at peace because she was just cleaning up the house, or maybe it was the studio, but she was cleaning and she could look at the space and go, this is my space. I love this space. And she would feel good for that little 2 or 3 minute period, I guess. And then the rest of the day was all this stress about like, how's the business going? And I related to that a lot because I go through that as well. I find that there's this point, like at any given moment, I feel like there's something I should be doing. I should be taking pictures, or I should be putting something on Instagram, or I should be making up an invoice, or I was supposed to process pictures. If I shot anything on video, I guarantee I didn't edit the video, and I still need to edit the video. I just can't stand editing video. So there's always all this work that I need to do. And even if all the work were done, then there should be some kind of marketing. I should be doing another mailing. I should be calling someone. I should be emailing someone. It's never ending for me. But I find there's this period in the morning when I eat breakfast, which is usually after my wife has left and my daughter has left. And I'll get about 20 minutes where I eat breakfast and I'm just on the internet. I'm on Facebook. I'm on World Star Hip Hop. I'm looking at the fights and all this other nonsense. And I'm completely at peace because I give myself permission to just enjoy while I'm eating breakfast and I'm just looking at nonsense on the computer. And that 20 minutes is like this beautiful period where I allow myself to not worry. And as soon as I finish that, then it's back to like, I got to send this out. I got to do this. Or it's like I go through that stress. But you, as someone who is not making a living off of photography at the moment, do you go through that?
Sometimes. I mean, I always try to give myself some time in the day to just kind of mentally relax and, just kind of put myself in a positive state, because I feel like that's when you're most creative. And even if like, I find when you're at your day job, usually you need to have some level of creativity to get through the day or to do a job. So I always give myself some time to, go through Instagram throughout the day or Facebook or Tumblr or whatever it is and just kind of, decompress and getting the kind of creative juices going and just chill.
Right. Now, there was an interesting Tim Ferriss podcast that I heard a while back with Josh Waitzkin was the guest on it, right? Who is Josh Waitzkin, Stephen?
Josh is the person that Searching for Bobby Fischer is based off of. He's he doesn't like the word, but he's a chess prodigy, and he's also the guy behind MG in Action, which is a very popular jiu-jitsu website.
Right, and he's a jiu-jitsu black belt.
Yes.
And like you said, he was a child. He was like 8 years old and like beating people in the park and stuff like that in chess.
Chess prodigy.
But he was on the Tim Ferriss podcast, and he talked about how what he does in the morning is for like the first, I'm going to say hour, I could have the time wrong. What he will do is he will not have any outside stimulus. He's not checking email. He's not looking at the internet. He's not looking at voicemail. He's using that first hour to just be creative.
Yep. To
be proactive and not reactive. Because, once you start answering emails, I'm doing what you need me to do. Oh, we need these pictures right now. That might not have been my priority. That's your priority. So, and if I'm looking at Facebook, or if I'm looking at thedailynews.com and it says, somebody killed 4 Marines who were just in a recruiting center.
Yeah.
Well, that might put me in a certain mood for the rest of the day of being negative and being depressed. And that's how I'm starting my day. So he talked about having sort of this blackout and just being creative as the first thing you do in the morning. And I try this every morning since I've heard it. I try. And there are days where I can get to like half an hour of like, I wake up, I don't look at anything. I just start retouching photographs. That's usually where I'll go for trying to not get this outside stimulus. I'll just retouch photos. And there's times I can get up to like half an hour and do it. And man, it is so hard. There's times after like 15 minutes, I'm like, okay, I did something creative. Let me check Facebook. Let me check my email. It is so difficult to just tune out all of those outside things that we are so accustomed to. I mean, right? What do you do when you wait online at the bank? What's the first thing you do?
Whip out the phone.
Whip out the phone. 2 seconds, someone's in front of you swiping a Metro card. What do? You whip out your phone again.
Yep.
So to take that morning time, especially in the morning because you think things may have built up in the last 12 hours.
Yeah, you want to see.
You might have some emails, and there might be a funny video of a guy falling down.
How many likes he got.
Yeah, it could be a good fight on a World Star. Yeah. And like you said, how many likes did the last picture get?
Right.
Did someone comment?
And the interaction is big.
Yeah. But I thought the point was so good. I wish I could do it, but it's hard. I do try it. I try it.
You got to it's one of those things you have to get into a habit too. But going back to Sue Bryce real quick, I just wanted to see what your take was. She spoke about knowing how many shoots you want to do per week, like setting that kind of goal, knowing, like factoring in the different things you have to do. So, if you have a shoot, then you have to retouch, you have to invoice and marketing and things like that. Do you ever find that you have that idea in your mind, like, I want to only do 3 shoots this week or 4 shoots this week? Or
No. I find that for me, my photography finds its own balance, that there are times I'm busy and there's times I'm not busy, and I love them both. I look at it like vacation. You love going to vacation, but I don't care where you go. By the time that vacation's over, you're glad to get home and you're ready to leave. Yeah. So when I'm busy, I love it. I love when I get day after day and I'm working and I'm shooting and I'm in that zone, and then the work ends and I get 3, 4, 5, maybe a week of days where I'm just home with my wife and daughter and I'm just watching TV and we're just chilling and we're on the porch or whatever. I love that as well. So I like them both, and I've never really sat there and said I want X amount of shoots per week or whatever. But I think that's just kind of my own personality, where I've always just been a little looser and not as rigid in numerically thinking I need X amount of shoots to make me happy or to make the money I want to make. It just kind of finds its own balance, and I've always been pleased with it. But again, I am going to work this program for a while, and I'm just going to see where it goes. And if that says, well, hey, set a goal of 3 shoots, I'm going to give that a try for a while and see how that goes for me.
Yeah, she's all about the very rigid and very formulated way of thinking about your business, because that's like the biggest thing I've taken away from this past couple of videos that I've watched, is that she wants you to look at it like a business, and you need to be profitable, and you need to do what you have to do to make this business work. And another thing she brought in was, aside from knowing how many shoots you plan on doing, and she talks about rating your website from 1 to 10 scale. And
Right.
she, you know, she says you have to be honest with yourself. How functional is your website? Does it get the point across? Your pricing, like what's
Right.
like. Her pricing was really big. She basically
Yeah.
broke down pricing to like a one sentence line. Well, she calls it, I think, an elevator pitch, and it's just
Right.
you know, it's this much for one picture, it's this much for a set, and then this much for a folio
Right.
box.
Yeah, definitely that stuff should be figured out. But again, in my particular business, it's usually not that way.
Yeah.
I have to meet with the client, see what they need, what I'm going to offer them. That hasn't usually been the way for me. But I think, again, if you're offering a certain kind of package, then you're doing that.
Yeah.
You're going like, hey, we do 3 looks and you're going to get these 10 pictures and this
Yeah.
is the price. So that's a different business model for me.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to try to apply it and see how it goes and where it goes. But one more thing, this is a lot. I mean, there was a
Yeah.
lot of
There's a
information.
lot
in
of
these-
information.
And this is just, we're only talking about the first 2 hours
Yep.
of this, which was 2 different introductions that she gave. We're not even talking about the real meat. And again, that was purpose because I didn't want to just
Give away the information.
give away the information.
Yeah.
I thought that would be kind of tacky in a talk about it. So I figured let's just do the introduction and then
Yeah.
we're not giving away anything. But another thing she said I thought was interesting, a way to look at the negative reactions, whether they're from your family or whether they're from the client. She said you should look at their reaction to what you do as a reflection of them and not you.
Yes.
So if I were to say to you, you know, I'm going to quit my day job as as a taxi driver, and I'm going to become a photographer. And then you say to me, oh my God, that's dumb. You're going to be broke in 5
Yeah.
years. I should look at that not as if, well, you know, Steven's known me for 20 years and
Yeah.
he knows what I'm capable of and maybe he's right. No, I should just go, Steven just projected his own fears back at me.
Yep.
This is what Steven thinks about himself. This is what Steven thinks would happen if he quit his job and did this. So that those statements become a reflection of the person who made them and not a reflection of me.
Yeah.
And I thought that's a nice positive mindset that you could have.
Yeah, it's important to always, you know, she says believe in yourself, and I think that's what a lot of people lack. They don't believe in the work they do. They don't believe in the ability they have, and you know, if you don't believe in yourself and you're always afraid and people are always negative around you, you're never really gonna get anything done. I mean, it took me forever to finally embrace, you know, photography as something I want to do professionally eventually.
Right.
And that's mostly because people are always telling me how difficult it is to make a living in photography and how competitive it is.
Right. But again, there's probably more people making money in photography now than ever before.
Ever,
and there's more people broke in it, but a lot of them are doing a lot of things wrong.
Yeah.
So you have to have the faith that you can be one of the people. And when you read a book like The Secret, they try to give you that similar mindset to where like you might think it's a big deal for you to succeed in photography, but in terms of New York City, if one more guy makes it, that's not a big deal.
Yeah, it's not.
That's not an earth-shattering event if one more guy can make a living at this, and that's all you need to happen. And the same as when you're selling the pictures at a high price. Hey, this week I just need one person to come in and believe these pictures are worth
This much.
this much money for me to take that in. I don't need everyone to think they're worth that much. 99 people can think it's overpriced. If one person thinks the price is right and I can find that person,
Yep.
I can make that amount of money. So you have to look at it.
You know, in New York City, people have that kind of expendable income.
Right. Oh, yeah, you're in New York. Are you
Yeah.
kidding? Like, there's places you can go get a $150 haircut. You can get a steak for $300 here.
Yeah. There's no lack of expendable income in this
You
city.
know, I took Uber the other day for the first time, and then there's all these choices. You could take like Uber X, and it's going to be like a raggedy car. You
Yeah.
can get like Uber Black. It'll be a little better.
Fancy luxury.
Right.
Yeah.
And you get the luxury one that's supposed to be 3 times the price.
Yep.
So again, it's not about the destination. Some people want the nice car. And you know which one I took. I took the cheap one.
Yep.
And I only took it because I had this.
I only take the cheap one too.
Yeah, I know this is the first time I took it, but because I was saying I don't take cabs, but I had to get my 27-inch iMac home from the Apple store.
Uh-oh.
So I had to get a cab. So I did the cheap Uber. But give us one more Sue Bryce before we wrap in a minute or so. One more thing that you got or that made you think or that just struck you from watching that presentation.
She made a big deal about being comfortable with your portfolio and being excited about it. She said a lot of it has to do with, you know, you attract the customers that, you attract the clientele that you kind of produce. So if you shoot very lively art, very lively photographs or very dark photographs, that's the kind of clientele you're going to attract. And part of that is also, you know, knowing what your portfolio looks like and being happy with it and being excited with it. And I thought that was pretty good because I know very few people who are actually excited about how their portfolio looks at any given moment.
Yeah, you know, mine, the weird thing with mine is like I'm shooting less hip hop than ever before in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And my book is still hip hop. And the book is great, but it's a little dated now.
Yeah.
I need a new book with a completely different content of images. And I could put together a really nice book of street photography, but no one cares about street photography.
Nope,
it's
not anymore.
It's the deadest form. Like it can be fun to shoot, but I find that in terms of a value of making money at it or anyone
it's
really
hard.
caring,
It's super hard.
no one cares. Like they'll just go, oh yeah, nice. It's the picture of a guy with a funny sign next to him, whatever. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
So I need, and I could do a book of, I could do a portfolio book of models, but it's like it's so dime a dozen it seems. So I don't really want to do that. It's all over my Instagram, but I don't want to make a portfolio book out of it. But my actual hip hop portfolio book, that book after several years and really doing a lot of educating and understanding what a vision-based portfolio is, I actually do have that, and I'm proud of having that. It's just now it's like a year or two old.
It's a little old.
There's not enough new hip hop in it, so I don't even really like to show it. But as you start getting a book together, I can walk you through understanding what a vision-based portfolio looks like. A book that's not a bunch of pretty pictures, but a book that is making a clear and consistent statement across the different subject matters. And I understand that now. It took me a while. And, we talk about David Duchemin, like every podcast, his name comes up. But his work helped me understand it. He was able to explain to me what vision was through reading his works. And I turned out I kind of knew what it was all along, and I was really pleased to see I was doing it already. I just didn't have like the vocabulary for it or the consciousness of it, but I was able to see, wow, I had this all along, and I was pleased to see that. So, but like I said, when you're ready, let me know. We'll
for
go
sure.
over
I'll
that.
take you up on that. I've got a ton of images I'm sorting through right now. I've still got digital files. I've got a ton, but I've got like 15 rolls of film I still have to develop that I shot in the past month.
Oh my God, you just reminded me of something.
What?
You just reminded me of something. Another one of these things that drove me crazy. So there was an article on petapixel.com.
Yeah,
if you know this,
I love
great
that
site. Yeah, great site. A lot of good content there. And it said some photographer lost all of his images when his house was robbed.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
They took like 6 hard drives. They got all the stuff. And the thing happens, I said to my wife, I go, look at this story. I go, I'm going to click the link. I'm not even going to read the story. I'm just going to read the comments because I know already every single comment's going to go, that's why I back up my work to 2 secure SSD RAID 4 servers. Like, not one person has any sympathy. Everybody's just like, oh, let me get this straight. Professional photographer, not backed up. Sorry, no sympathy here. Like, it's just, photographers just have no compassion.
That's the voice of the internet. The internet has no compassion. The internet just doesn't care. If you're down, the internet's going to kick you in the stomach.
Right. And everybody's so smug. And you know what irks me about it is this. Okay, so the guy who writes, like, I back up my images right now. Okay, I have a total of probably 9 hard drives connected to my computer, about 9. It's 3 different hard drives that back up into three hard drives. So they go 1 to 1, 1 to 1, 1 to 1, and then there's like the Time Machine has its own drive, and then there's another drive of like old DVDs of photos. Like when I was archiving on DVD, there's a drive where I'm just taking off DVD and putting onto that drive. It's just, there's a lot of drives, but they do back up to each other at least. However, I don't have an off-site backup. I have not taken the time to clone those drives and keep a copy at the studio. And the guys who are doing that, who are doing completely perfect archiving system, the idea that they're going to be so smug about it, like instead of going, oh my God, I'm so lucky, my stuff's, but the smugness of like, that's why my stuff is backed up, it makes me sick. And you know why? Because you see, you can have an area of your life that you have perfectly correct. Okay? But there's probably other areas that you don't have correct. So again, so you take me. I don't have the backup system 100% correct. It's decent because it is getting backed up, but I don't have the off-site backup, so it's not a good system. Okay. But at the same time, I've been studying martial arts without fail for 25 years now, okay? From karate through Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I'm reasonably confident that if I get into a fight on a subway train, I can handle myself.
Yeah.
That's an area that I have taken care of, that if someone really seriously tried to hurt my daughter, I am in a position where I can help defend her. I can protect her.
Yeah.
But the guy who's writing that, this might be a guy who's never taken a self-defense class in his life, never been punched in the face, has no idea what to do if the fight goes to the ground or something. But you're going to go and be arrogant and make fun of a guy who didn't back up his drives. But there's probably an area that you don't have under control.
Yeah.
Or maybe your diet's not under control. Or maybe your personal relationships. Maybe you've done nothing to foster a relationship with your children so that when you get old, you can sit and drink lemonade with your children on the porch, your grandchildren on the porch. So there's no point in picking the one area. That's like me going on World Star, and if there's a fight and a guy didn't know what he'd do, go, well, I think I would have done better because I studied Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah, okay, but you're writing that, but your stuff's not backed up. So there's just no point in being that arrogant about the area that you have under control, because there's probably an area just as important regarding health or self-defense or retirement income or relationship with your parents that you don't have under control.
Yeah,
but that smugness
that's
is
just
like,
the internet, though. You're never going to run out of that on the internet. There's always, go to any place where there's content and there's a comment section.
Right.
There will be those people.
Right.
Always.
And then they never have their name.
Nope.
Like my name, I comment like on a few different places. Not if I have to, a lot of times if I have to register, I don't bother.
Yeah.
Some blogs now, they'll let you register through Facebook and something called Discuss that I seem to be linked into somehow. And I'll comment occasionally, but anytime I make a comment, it's under my name.
Yeah,
Like,
I
I
try to do
stand
the
by
same.
what I say.
Yeah.
It's my name. It's John Ricard. It's not some goofy, crazy
alias.
name like alias hiding
Yeah.
behind an internet opinion, like making
sure.
fun of some photographer who didn't back up properly. Like that can't happen to you. It can happen to anybody. Like, and if not that, then something else, you know. But
For sure.
that arrogance. But boy, when I read that, I was like, I'm not even going to read the article because I don't even care about the article. I just have to read these comments because I know everyone is going to say the same thing, how it would never happen to them.
Some pro photographer, huh?
Yeah, that's all they're going to say, though.
But at least he got his stuff back.
Oh, he did? I didn't even hear that. No,
well,
I didn't
the
hear
whole
that.
thing about that was he got mugged or he got robbed, and the reason why they were able to find all his stuff was because all his pictures had copyright metadata.
Okay.
And he was able to track somehow where all his hardware.
Like
ended
if
up.
someone posted it or something, maybe.
Yeah,
or
or they
something?
try to fence the hard drives. And when they went through them, they found all the information belonging to the person.
But an article I read somewhere, which was about him, said Amazon Prime, if you're a member of Amazon Prime, which I am, you have free unlimited photo storage in their cloud. I never knew that. So I was like,
that's recent.
Yeah, I never heard of that. But
Yeah, you can upload all your data to their storages, and the way I believe it works is if you need something from that archive, it's really meant something you will put up there and you don't really touch.
Correct.
But if you do need something, you have to request it like 2 hours in advance, or you have to allow it 2 hours for them to fetch that data.
Right.
But it's essentially free if you have Amazon Prime.
Wow. But I don't know. The thing I was wondering, like, I'm like, well, would that work for me as an offsite backup in the sense that can I upload a 6 terabyte drive?
Probably.
An 8 terabyte drive?
I don't
How long does that take?
remember there being a limit.
But how long does that take? And
that'll take a while.
And is it one of those things where, like, if it gets a little corrupted uploading, then it doesn't work right? Like, you got to start all over?
I think as long as you have a stable connection, you should be all right.
Yeah, I mean, I have this Verizon Fios. It's supposed to be super
you
fast.
should be
so
fine. Yeah.
I don't know. But it's something to think about. When you see those stories, for me at least, it does make me think. I'm like, okay, I got to get that together. I got to go I got to do the off-site backup thing.
Yeah. I mean, I got to get that under control on my end, too. I have to buy a couple hard drives, actually.
They're so cheap, though, man. The last one I bought was a G-Tech 6 terabyte drive for $350.
That's good.
And I love G-Tech. I got them originally because Jeremy Coward and Chase Jarvis and Vincent LaFerre and all these guys who I respect use it. I fall for that kind of advertising. I'm guilty of it. It's fine. But I believe when I see those guys endorse a product, I believe that they do actually use it and that they do actually like the product, and that makes me buy it. So I follow that endorsement. And I love those drives, and I've realized now that if you need a repair, all you have to do is give them the serial number, and they tell you if it's in warranty. You don't have to have the receipt or proof of purchase or anything. They just go, okay, yeah, that's still under warranty, and then you just send it in, and they'll either replace it or fix it or do whatever they have to do. So
they're very good about that kind of stuff.
that's
G-Tech.
great. But $350 for a 6 terabyte drive. I mean,
Is it one drive or
one
is it
drive,
multiple drives?
Yeah, it's very small because I
Okay.
have a couple of 4s and some 8s that are really big.
Yeah.
But the 6 is very small. It still looks cool. It looks kind of metal. It looks really nice.
G-Tech's very sleek looking.
Yeah, they're the best looking drives for sure, you know. But all right, then I think we're going to wrap Camera Work podcast number. I think it was 36, right?
Yep.
Where do they find you, Stephen?
Well, the easiest way to find me and see my work is on Instagram. It's just @_Stefan Gomez. That's pretty much Stephen with a PH.
Got it. Okay. And of course, my Instagram is John Ricard. And don't forget, the podcast is on iTunes and YouTube. So if you're listening to it on one of those platforms, be aware that it's on the other platform if at times that works better for you. And as I say almost every week, you know, write a comment, comment. When you write those comments, I see it. I'm like emailing Ray, or in this case, I'd be emailing Steven, like, look, we got a comment, and this is what they said. It gets noticed. It's not like when they tell me, do you want to rate Instagram? Like anybody's going to care that John Ricard likes Instagram. Like that's going to make any difference in 2015 July, what I think of Instagram. But, you know, take the time to write those questions because someone is really going to see it and think about what you said. Yeah. Okay. So thanks a lot for tuning in, and we'll see you guys soon when I come up with more stuff to talk about.
Thanks for having me.
All right. You got it, man. You'll be back. Don't worry. All right. Thanks.
Bye.